What is happening, you beautiful bastards? Welcome back to another week. This week, our guest is Jeff Belanger, and Jeff is everything spooky Christmas.
He is. But before we get to that, remember, if you like what you guys are hearing, like and subscribe on YouTube so you can keep hearing more. But Jeff Belanger is an Emmy-nominated filmmaker. He is an adventurer, a folklore expert, and all-around expert on creepy things. And on today's episode, we're actually talking about the true story of Christmas. I know, it's heartwarming, but it's actually horrifying.
We're going to learn where some of those little festive decorative ideas come from and where they went wrong.
Exactly. And you're also going to find out why you should be putting intestines all over your house in December.
I'm doing it this year.
I've been trying to talk my wife into wrapping intestines around the tree, but she's just not having it. So I guess I'm going to have to use the modern equivalent. What is it? Tinsel?
I would assume tinsel.
No, garland. That's right.
Either or.
But I think you guys are going to like finding out the real history of Santa Claus, Krampus, and just how many kids get killed every year.
What is happening, you beautiful bastards?
Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having
Today,
me.
we're talking about creepy Christmas. I'm a little clueless on this one.
Actually,
Really?
so am I.
Oh, well, allow me to enlighten you. Do you guys get the sense that Christmas is just too commercial, too humbug, too all that?
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, I actually am not a big fan of Christmas because of the commercialization.
It's bad.
We're going to fix all that in the next hour. It'll be fixed.
Okay.
I don't like to use the word miracles. I don't like to call myself a miracle worker or a hero, but yet here we are. I mean, I can't think of another term. And start the timer because, like, I'm ready to do it.
Do we need to not buy gifts for my children this year? Like,
I mean, that's your funeral. There's no law, right? That says you have to. But I wouldn't want to be around your house.
Yeah, no, my kids be bullshit.
Should you neglect that part of the tradition, which goes back thousands of years, even long before Jesus. So, but that's totally true. So for me, it was years ago, maybe like 6-7 years ago. And I was hanging the wreath on my front door and I was feeling super grinchy, like I was Scrooging
Just
out.
bullshit with the world.
Yeah. I was like, why am I doing this? And my wreath, by the way, it's plastic. It's not real. It's like so
you didn't even have to go out and get one. You just, all right, take this out of storage.
You know what I did? I took it out of the attic. I took the leaf blower to it to get the dust off. Right. And I started putting that thing up and I'm hanging it and I'm like, why am I doing this year after year? And I was thinking like, my dad did it growing up. And I mean, I think it looks pretty. I'm not, a total monster. I'm like, it looks nice and whatever. But why the wreath? Why the evergreen? Why the holly berries? Why the lights? Why December 25th? Why Santa? Why everything?
Yeah,
And
none of this makes any sense.
None of it. No, it's insanity. And so I went and the way I learn about things in general, the way my mind works is I like to take something and then smash it into a million pieces and break it all apart and then try to piece it back together again. And so I went and did that with Christmas, like it was a Fabergé egg, right? Like that I just took from a museum and I carefully brought it outside to the sidewalk and went, right, shattered it everywhere and rebuilt it.
You were grinchy that year.
Yeah, clearly. And so, and what I learned was that it's an incredible tradition that goes back, like I said, thousands of years, and it incorporates so many different cultures that once I rebuilt it, I actually think it's a lot more cool than I ever did before.
I like where this is going. It's right now, my view on Christmas is if it never happened again, I'd be okay.
No, well, here's the thing. Christmas is most closely tied to a very specific celestial event that occurs whether you like it or not. And that, of course, is the winter solstice.
Yeah.
Right?
That much I'm aware of. That was one of the things that really confuses me about Christmas because it's not really that Christian.
No, Jesus is not the reason for the season at all. In fact, if you read the Bible, which you should, I mean, it's a page turner in places, for sure. There's one chapter in the Bible that gives us the only clue we get as to when Jesus was born, and that's in Luke chapter 2. And since I know you two heathens don't have it memorized, I'm going to go ahead and read it to you. It says, shepherds were living out in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night, when an angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. That sort of rings a bell, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, in Bethlehem, there are only there's 3 seasons of the year where shepherds would sleep out at night, and that would be spring, summer, and fall, which means the only one we can rule out is winter. That's the only season, according to the Bible, Jesus was not born in. So really, this whole thing started, like long before Jesus, the story of Jesus, it was Saturnalia. It was this incredible 6-day raging party in Rome where the world was turned upside down, where masters would serve the servants, servants would become the masters, everybody would give gifts, they'd get drunk, they'd feast, there'd be orgies, there would be this raging party all around the winter solstice. The solstice always fell in that 6-day range right near the end of December. And that was just this huge raging party.
I thought that was just a Tuesday in Rome, but okay.
No, this it gets worse. It's like Fat Tuesday in New Orleans, right? Like there's a party all year round, and then it just reaches this crescendo. But then if you go north, like to the Nordic regions of the world, the winter solstice, I mean, this is a scary, scary time. Halloween cannot hold a candle to Christmas when it comes to fear factor. Halloween is just ghosts, right? I mean, ghosts could be scary, sure. Christmas, these monsters will kill you, literally kill you, murder you. You'll be dead. They'll kill your children. They'll kill your family. They'll kill everything. Like your life is in danger at Christmas. And that's a huge difference. It's a big deal.
That was like everything Nord, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, because, okay, so picture this, right? It's the winter solstice, and it's the shortest day of the year. There's so little sunlight, and you're scared if the sun's even going to come back at all. Right? I mean, is it going to be dark forever? And you look out at the landscape, right? And winter has killed everything. The leaves are dead. The flowers are dead. The grass is dead. Everything in the landscape is dead except the evergreen. This evergreen tree must be stronger than winter, which means it must be magical. There must be something to it. And you hear this weird screeching sound that you don't hear in the other seasons of the year. It's like this whistling screech through the trees. And you wonder if that's just the wind through naked trees, or if it's like the vanquished foe of the Norse god Odin screaming out, and those spirits are coming for you. And so you take these mighty evergreen branches and you put them over your doors and over your windows so the needles will keep out those angry spirits and keep you safe inside. These magical trees, right? I mean, it's that important. And not only that, the Nordic people thought these trees were so sacred that they would take the entrails from their kills, like drape the intestines, the bloody intestines around the evergreen. And I want you to think about that the next time you're stringing popcorn and putting it around your tree. You guys, if you want to bring Christmas back, have a traditional Christmas, use real entrails on your tree and say, we're taking it back. We're going back.
My wife's going to be wondering why I'm laughing my ass off when she's decorating the front of the house this year.
You're trying to keep the bad spirits out.
I gotta say, this has already changed my perception of Christmas, and if we will forever be known as the season of death to me from this time forward, and I really like that.
We're just getting started. There's so much more. And so, like the Nordic people, especially, right? There was a drinking horn where everyone would drink ale from the same horn, signifying that we're all equal, because we know, I mean, if my roof collapses, I might be coming to Grizz's house and being like, dude, I need you to put me up for the winter. And he has to, because he knows if it was his roof that collapsed, I would have to do it. And this is the only season, right? We live in the northern parts of the world, right? We live in spring, summer, and fall, but we survive the winter. Like winter is like the season of death. It's the season you fear. You have to save up for it. You have to store your food. You have to pray that you're going to make it, that you'll keep your sanity, because you're not busy all day. You're not farming, right? You're sitting in the dark and the cold, trying to keep warm, listening to those screeching, howling sounds, and just trying to survive to spring. I mean, it is the most frightening time of year, hands down.
Totally.
Definitely. I actually think that's how I view winter, generally speaking. I don't like it because of all the things you just said. I'm basically just surviving.
That's
Jerry
right.
just hates the cold.
And think about it now. I mean, we've got central heat and we've got so many ways. It's just, we've grown soft in the last couple centuries. It hasn't been that long. but these traditions go way, way back. And so when you've got this time to sit around a fire, you've got time to share stories of ghosts and monsters. And these monsters all come from these cold regions, from Germany, from Bulgaria, from Iceland, from Norway and Sweden. These creatures just come forth, and they got associated first with the solstice. And then later, when Christianity became such a big thing, so what happened was, the real reason for the season and the real reason for Christianity was a guy named Nicholas from Myra, which is modern day Turkey. This guy was born in 270 AD, and he died December 6th, 343 AD. And that's an important day. December 6th is St. Nicholas Day through most of Europe. That's the day that St. Nicholas would come and bring presents to the good girls and boys. And he's based on a real guy who was sainted, who was a wealthy kid who was orphaned and gave away his wealth his whole life, because that's what made him happy, taking care of other people, being generous. And he's celebrated every year December 6th.
Did he just give away wealth, or was he actually delivering gifts to kids?
Well, whatever they needed. It was mainly money, right? I mean, that was, but he just lived this pious life where he wanted to help others however he could and give away all of his fortune. And so that's worth celebrating. I mean, that's a noble, good thing to do. And so St. Nicholas is really the star of the show, which is no surprise. He still is. But he has these cohorts. Those are the things that got attached. So December 6th, critical day, St. Nicholas Day. December 5th, day before, that belongs to Krampus. Krampusnacht, Krampus Day. And I get so fired up when people are like, oh, Krampus, he's the Christmas devil. He's got horns and he's covered in fur and he's got chains and he's got this burlap sack and this scratchy basket that he puts all the naughty children in. And he comes along and he snatches them up on December 5th and takes them away to his mountain lair, and he kills them and eats them. They die. They're dead. There's no redemption. They're absolutely gone and devoured. And then on December 6th, St. Nicholas comes along and delivers toys to all the good girls and boys, because there's no bad children left. They've been cleaned out the day before. And so when people call Krampus the anti-Santa Claus, it's just not true. They work together. These are partners. This is good cop, bad cop. This is the oldest story there is, right? I mean, these guys are partners. And if you look at some of the old postcards and drawings, they're in the same sleigh together. St. Nicholas is driving. Krampus is right next to him. One of them is coming to reward and one of them is coming to punish. And that tradition was around and hugely popular, especially in like the latter part of the 1800s and the early part of the 1900s. The monsters of Christmas were celebrated more, you could say, more than St. Nicholas.
He's become an elf.
Yeah. Do we know how the Krampus turned from a murderer to a lump of coal?
Yeah. So, okay, here's what happened. And Krampus wasn't alone, by the way. I mean, there's so many other creatures, right? And then if Krampus is a little too rough for your family, so, maybe you gather your kids around and you go, listen, kids, it's almost December 5th and Krampus is coming. And if you hear the chains coming, and if you're any kind of parent at all like me, you'll have chains ready for just this occasion when they're in bed and you're in the hallway, like, rattling those chains. If you hear Krampus coming, he's going to come in and he's going to snatch you up and he's going to take you out to his cave and he's going to kill you. If you wake up on December 6th and you're still alive, miracle of miracles, you were a good kid this year. And you've got another year to make it.
So if your kid had a rough year, you can tell him on the night of December 5th, it's been nice knowing you. I really appreciated our time together.
I don't know how you're going to survive the night, little Johnny. I don't know how you're going to make it. But if that's too much for your family, there's also, Germany also gave us the Bellschnickel, which is, what's great about the Bellschnickel is like every year in a community, you get to take turns being the Bellschnickel. So like this year might be my year and next year might be Jerry's year or whatever. So it's called Nicholas in furs. You dress in like patchwork furs. Your face is covered with soot. You carry a switch of sticks. And so I'd come to your house, Grizz, and I'd be like, any naughty kids? And you'd be like, well, this one's okay, but this one, not so much. And so I would take your naughty kid out to the backyard, tie them to a tree and beat their ass with those sticks until they're screaming and bloody. And then I'd say, all right, now you have time to behave before St. Nicholas comes. And, maybe you'll get some presents this year. And then we give each other a wink as I walk out. And next year it's your turn to beat my kids. You get to be the Bellschnickel, and everybody's happy and everybody's so joyous.
Child abuse, classic entertainment.
I mean, if you didn't have cable, right? What are you going to do? Right.
I bet those kids didn't act out though, for the most part.
Those Germans could keep those kids in line, man. Let me tell you.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So Krampus starts to go away. Really, it gets to be like the 19-teens, 1920s, the Great Depression hits, and we're trying to claw our way out of the Great Depression. And the Coca-Cola company comes up with this idea. Let's take this Santa Claus figure that the most we know about him really is from this poem, "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," and Harper's Magazine and stuff like that. He's kind of been gaining traction. He's really Saint Nicholas, who the Dutch called Sinterklaas and brought him over to New York, and Sinterklaas became Americanized to Santa Claus. And so he's evolving, but suddenly the Coca-Cola company comes out and says, let's use this guy to sell Coca-Cola. And they really evolve the image into the big guy with the red suit with the fur on it. And so when I say Santa Claus and you take a picture in your mind, you can thank the Coca-Cola company for that picture, because they're the ones that turned him into that. And then from there, he exploded. And it worked so well for Coca-Cola that every other company, like Macy's, said, well, wait a minute, Santa Claus can be in our toy department and can be getting kids to ask for our various toys. And endless amounts of companies started using Santa Claus to help sell their products. And Christmas in December became this huge time of year for our economy, to get us in the black, right? Like Black Friday is called Black Friday because you're in your accounting, you're supposed to go in the black for that day for the year. Yeah. And so Santa Claus became a critical part of it. And then the whole world kind of got soft. We got Disney-fied, right? So the monsters started to go away and seep back into the shadows, and St. Nicholas became the star of the show. And the only consequence was coal and sticks, which, by the way, there was a time in certain parts of the country where those were great gifts. They're cold, right? Like they keep you warm for a little bit. Like that's firewood. That's fire fuel. So anyway, that was the point when the monsters started to go away. However, all of these monsters are at our service, really, and they're coming back. And it's not my opinion. I mean, the Krampus movie came out a few years ago, and I've been to the New England Krampus Society's annual ball, where there's 50 Krampuses. People dress like this is what cosplayers do at Christmas time, right? Like they look amazing, and it's just getting bigger and bigger. So these monsters are making this huge comeback because I think we need them again, because I think we're trying to get back to the scary roots of this holiday and recognizing that there's real consequences for bad behavior. It's not just reward. It's, hey, there's a real dark side to this holiday too, and we should acknowledge it.
Yeah, we did find out, what was it, maybe I guess 10 years ago now, that they really had gotten into the whole hey, don't punish your kids at all, just all rewards and everything like that. It'll be, and that's the best way to do it. And all of a sudden, a few years later, they're like, no, we need to back off of that. We need to go back the other direction because y'all gone crazy and kids are just going nuts.
Yeah, if you want your kids to behave, they need to be afraid that they're literally going to die.
So if you read the Grimm fairy tales, and they're great reading, right? So
the originals are amazing.
They're brutal, right? There's no there's no, like the glass slipper in Cinderella. One of the stepsisters cuts her toes off so she could try to fit in it, and she fills the glass slipper with blood. The other stepsister cuts her heel off and fills it with blood again. I mean, it is gruesome and dark and deadly. And that's
how it all used to be.
That's the point, right? Because kids can understand that. I think we tried to keep them safe. We had good intentions, but we screwed up. And and the pendulum swings. The good news is you can swing it back, right? You can bring it back. These traditions and these darker stories, you can incorporate them and bring them back into your own families. They're coming whether you like it or not. That's how it is.
I'm totally gonna, how you ever drive around and you have a fire truck or an ambulance near you and you can hear the chains? Down south, you guys won't have this, but up north we have it. They use the chains so they can get through the snow. Whenever I hear those chains, I'm totally gonna fuck with my kids now.
It's Krampus. Here comes Krampus. Yeah, no, I mean, and that's the thing. These stories, and I mean, come on, Krampus never really went away. Think about the Grinch Who Stole Christmas. Yeah, come on, man. That's Krampus. He lives in a mountain lair. There's a scene where his little fur curls up into horns. I'm like, oh, come on, Dr. Seuss. That was 1960s, right? So I mean, Krampus has been sort of nearby, right all along. It's just I think we're sort of pulling him out of the shadows again. With my daughter growing up, we have Elf on the Shelf, but we also have Krampus on the mantle, which is twice the fun.
I'm gonna have to bust that one out.
My kids were actually asking for Elf on the Shelf this year. We have never done it, so I was thinking about doing it this year. This just seems like a good time. My son is well aware that Santa's not real. But my daughter, who's 7, I actually asked her recently. I was like, "Do you think Santa's real or not? What do you believe?" She says to me, "Well, Mommy's the Tooth Fairy because she found that out. So I think you're probably Santa. But just in case he's real, I'm not going to say that."
Got it.
So we're going to do the Elf on the Shelf, but now we're definitely doing Krampus on the mantle.
So Elf on the Shelf is a great story too. I mean, that in Sweden, they have the Tomten, which is really, when you hear the story, you're just like, oh, someone has a lawsuit, right? So the Tomten is this little troll-like creature that I guarantee if you've ever been in like a craft store, you've seen it. It's like all hat and all beard, right? Like,
yeah, like a gnome.
No, exactly, like a gnome. So that's how he's depicted, is like all hat and all beard with like a little nose sticking out. But the Tomten is this helper elf that lives with you all year long. And he helps you with your chores, whether it's yard work and taking care of the animals in the barn or housework or whatever. He helps you here and there, but he also keeps you in line. So if you're like neglecting the animals or whatever, he might literally slap you around and get you to like go take care of things.
I need a couple of these guys around my house.
That's what I'm saying, right? And he only asks one thing. On Christmas Eve, you have to leave him out a bowl of Riesengrot, which is this sticky sweet rice pudding that you leave out as a food offering for the Tomten. And he eats it and he'll stay with you another year. The biggest way he can punish you, the worst thing he can do is he can leave. He'll leave you and you'll have no help. And so you leave out this bowl, this food offering, and he sticks around for another year. And while I recognize that some people might be like, that's too pagan to leave out a food offering for a fairy type creature, I could never do that.
Cookies are.
That's what I'm saying. We've been leaving cookies out every year, and we know Santa prefers beer compared to milk, right? I mean,
God, yeah,
it's pretty well established. So yeah, so these traditions, the Elf on the Shelf, the idea that you've got this fairy creature that's sort of like keeping an eye on you, and then but isn't always visible. It's been around. It's been around for a long, long time. It's just someone commercialized it.
Yeah, now it's my pain in the ass that I have to move around nightly.
Well, you know what? Not all your kids believe in Santa, right? Just enlist one to help. He can be your gnome.
He'll forget too. Who you can.
Isn't that the best? You're in bed. You're like you're tired. It's been a long day, and you're just starting to drift. And you're like,
damn it! It's got to be creative too, right? You can't just be like, all right, I'm putting them over here. No, I've got to think of something crazy.
I've definitely phoned a few in. Like it moved 1 foot to the left.
You could tell the nights that where my wife does it, because she gets like into it, but she does it like maybe 3 times in the season. Where I'm just like, this is open.
Right. Yeah, in the microwave. How are we going to use the microwave, Dad?
Yeah.
Damn it! I can't do this anymore.
Is there anything else that is as dangerous as the Krampus? Because we got a whole bunch of monsters, right?
There's some that are way more dangerous than Krampus. In Bulgaria, they've got the Karakonkalis, which is this shape-shifting monster. He's a horned beast, but you don't usually see him that way. And he comes along, especially on Christmas Eve, and he can shapeshift. He can become anyone, including like your Aunt Agnes. So if you're, waiting and having relatives arrive and the doorbell rings and it's Aunt Agnes and you look out, I mean, it might not be. It could be the Karakonkalis. And I'm saying don't risk it, right? Don't let her in. Just be like, hey, Agnes, I'm sorry. You should have been here earlier before nightfall. Karakonkalis is out and, we're not taking any chances this year. And so that one's what he does, by the way, is, and if you sort of call him out, he'll ask you a riddle. And the word black has to be incorporated in the answer to the riddle. And if you screw it up, he hits you with one blow of the fist on top of your head and you die. So, not the
And he
best way
only comes out at night and the day before Christmas, or the whole month, or what?
He's a Christmas Eve kind of guy. But then he gets tied to the holiday. But no, I mean, there's others that are even worse. I think the most lethal is probably the Grilla, which is from Iceland. And unlike all the others, right? I mean, Krampus serves a purpose. He doesn't attack good kids. If you're a good person, you don't have to fear Krampus. But Grilla is like this. She's a troll, and it's a woman who lives in the mountains. And she comes down and she's got 13 tails, and she just wants to eat children. It doesn't matter if they were good or bad. She's just out for blood, and she wants to eat children. So you have to protect your children around the winter solstice, around Christmas. And she's also got like these hordes of cohorts, these Yule lads, 13 of them, that show up on a different day in December leading up to Christmas. And each of them stays for 2 weeks. So you have all these various like overlapping Yule lads that'll also show up. It's Iceland's crazy. I mean, they've got, Yule lads, they've got the Yule cat, a cat that wants to see your new clothes on Christmas. And if you don't get new clothes for Christmas, he'll attack and kill you, which is just great.
So you're at someone else's mercy. So if you just get toys, you're screwed.
Yeah, right.
But that's like all in Northern European, man. Like, I swear they had all that long ass winter where they just thought of the craziest stuff ever. And I always wondered why they always, like Roman times, they'd be like, oh, she's got 100 heads or 13 tails here. They always go crazy with the numbers of heads and tails. I don't understand why. Always got 2 arms, 2 legs, but heads and tails.
Well, have you guys ever been fishing?
Yeah.
You know how like fishing stories go? Man, I caught this 4 pound, this thing was this big. And each time you tell the story, the fish gets bigger and bigger. And that's kind of how folklore works, right? Someone describes a monster and people lean in and go, really? And she had 5 tails. No, she had 13 tails. 13. That's an unlucky number, right? Like, oh, of course, it's a mocking of the 12 disciples of Jesus. Like it's 13 and it's and she's so evil, and how evil? She eats babies. Like, oh my God, right? Like, it's so each time you tell the tale, it gets a little more grotesque, a little more memorable, and then you got to call out a few specifics so we know exactly who you're talking about. And what's cool in Iceland, I saw this picture in the mall. They had this big grilla with like a pot. Like this big pot, and you could put your kids in it and take pictures, which I thought was like, oh, why don't we have that? I mean, we need to borrow from our Icelandic friends, right? We need this in our malls.
Yeah, we definitely do.
I'm going to have my wife listen to this one so she can learn what we're going to be implementing in all of our Christmases going forward. It's going to look like Halloween
2.0 for Jerry.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? So you and Christmas is so secular and always has been, right? It was born of the solstice, and it was born of this festival. Like, okay, Saturnalia was about the god Saturn and so on, but like at the same time, like the solstice affects everybody. It's inclusive, right? There's nobody that's left out. And so this holiday has its roots in the spirit of that spirit of surviving the hardest season of the year, spirit of working together, celebrating together, coming together with our harvest, sharing our stores if we have to, sharing our goodwill, knowing that we're going to need each other to get through this. And then, it really got Christianized and kind of hijacked. But it's okay to make it secular, right? I mean, it's okay. I'd like to see it be more inclusive, right? I mean, go ahead. If you want to celebrate St. Nicholas, you can. You don't have to be Christian. I mean, this was a good guy, a real person from Myra, who gave his wealth away. And that's a story worth sharing. And if you want to include the Jesus story, that's totally okay too. I don't always celebrate my birthday on the actual day. I mean, sometimes we wait for the weekend, whatever, like it's okay. I mean, it's totally okay to make it religious if that's what works for your family. But I don't think it's okay to think that I should be able to define it for all people.
Right.
That I don't think is very cool, because who am I? Right. I'm just this guy that likes weird stories. But I love when you look at this thing and you look at the evolution of the holiday. It's changed every single year. I mean, last year's Christmas is different than this year's, right? I mean, there'll be a new trend, there'll be a new this, a new that, and that's okay. That's cool. That's times change. That's how it's supposed to work. But so when you have this kind of like understanding of where it all came from, to me, it just means more now. Like when I put up the wreath, I am thinking about keeping out the bad spirits, right? And whether that's metaphorical, or literal, whatever, we're all different that way.
Does this tie into other religions, or is Christianity the one that kind of hijacked it most recently?
Well, yeah. So I mean, it's totally pagan in all of its roots.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but no, but Christianity came along when Saint Nicholas became such a huge figure, and again that was tied to December 6th, by the way.
Right.
The 25th had to do with the Roman emperor who was trying to unify Rome under one God, and he wasn't outlawing other religions. Right? He didn't say you're not allowed to not be Christian. He just knew it would be easier if there was one official religion. It would be easier to rule, which is true. I mean, if you're running a society, having a bunch of disparate gods is really complicated. As
they had way too many.
Yeah, it gets to be a lot. So he's unifying Rome. So Saturnalia is always like December 17th to the 23rd, right? And the solstice always falls in there somewhere. And so he knows there's been this raging party going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. And the Emperor Constantine is like, I can't take Saturnalia away. They'll kill me. They'll literally lynch me like that minute. I'll be like, no more Saturnalia. Like I will live like another 2 minutes and then I'm gone. He's like, so when he's trying to sell Christianity to the Romans, he's like, all right, Saturnalia, big party, right? I'm going to add 2 more days to it. We're going to call the 24th Christmas Eve, the 25th Christmas Day, and pow, 6 days of partying is now 8 days of partying. And all the people were like, party, we can get on board with that, right? And so it was sold that way. And the 25th became the day in Rome, and it just sort of carried forth. And all you had to say, and Christianity had a long tradition of doing this. Easter is really about the goddess Esther, right? The fertility goddess, who's represented by what? The rabbit and the egg, signs of fertility. And so, Easter Sunday becomes this incorporation of these pagan ideas where we're teaching fertility to our kids through a very safe and innocent way, right? The bunny and the egg, this prolific procreator, and the egg, which turns into something else. And so, like, there's a long tradition of this. Halloween is the Celtic New Year, Samhain. But then the church came along and said, well, we can't compete with that. Let's call it All Hallows Eve. And so every one of these holidays, and by the way, if you look the world over, there's 4 big ones and 4 minor ones. And they're defined by the movement of the stars and planets. The 4 big ones are winter, spring, summer, fall, right? The solstices and the equinoxes, which are precise moments every year. And then the 4 minor ones are halfway, right? The halfway between. Yeah. So Halloween is halfway between fall and winter. And each one, if you look at all the major religious holidays of the world, they fall pretty darn close to those specific events. They just go by different names.
That's interesting. I didn't think about that.
It makes a lot of sense, though, especially like if you're trying to rule Rome and you tell a group of people, God said this is what we're doing. And everyone says, which God?
Which one?
Well, which one do you follow? Because that's the one I'm talking about.
Well, it also makes sense. Just, nowadays you're not so much surviving as you're thriving, hopefully. But like if you were surviving, right, and you're getting to what the halfway point is, the point where it's becoming, you're getting on that brink of breaking, right? So we got to have a party to refresh everyone to get it back to where we need to be.
Right. So Halloween is the Celtic New Year, Samhain. And it's the time when the veil between the world of the living and world of the dead is at its thinnest. And so the ghosts and monsters and imps and fairies come into our world and meddle in our affairs. And we leave out food offerings for the dead. And we dress up our children as those monsters in the hopes that when these creatures come forth, they'll get confused and not snatch up our kids and drag them back down to the underworld. And so that's Halloween now. And then the Yule, winter solstice, that's the shortest day of the year. That's scary. That you pray that the sun will return, and in some parts of the world, it's gone. It's literally, it's not going to rise again for a while. It's going to be total darkness for a few weeks. Imagine how scary that is. And you're trying to make sense of that, an eternal night. What do we do? How do we get through this? How do we get through this long, dark night? And that's so many traditions and stories get woven into that really frightening time of year.
It did always boggle me, like when humans were first traveling throughout the world, when they got to these places, why the hell did they stay? It had to be that it was in like summer, right? Because there's no way they got there in the middle of the winter. We're like, whoo, Thank God I'm here. This is where I'm building up camp. Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny thing, and so many cultures. I truly believe that one of the problems with the world today is that we have too much access to information, more than we've ever had in all of human history, right? So 1,000 years ago, your whole world could be like literally 100 people. That's the most people you're going to meet in your whole life.
That's probably a lot too. Yep.
Yeah, and by the way, you're going to have to like marry and breed with one of them, right? Like it's not a huge pool to choose from. It's just like, you have this small society. You were hunter gatherers. Now you're starting to farm and form this little community, and then it grows into cities and so on. And it gets complicated and it gets scary. But still, the only information you get are from like your neighbors, and the information is just like, oh, my cow's sick, or my daughter's expecting a baby.
Yeah, it's all the stories that have been passed on.
Yeah, right. And those stories help us. They serve us. They prepare us for scary things. And I think we do a disservice to our kids if we don't tell them about the monsters, because we know as adults there are monsters in the world, right? I mean, there are absolute monsters. There's monsters that drive SUVs into parades, into Christmas parades.
Some fucked up shit.
That's if that's not a monster, I mean, tell me another word, right? I mean, that's a monster. That's as scary as anything we've ever heard. And so we tell our kids these stories because when they hear about this kind of stuff, they go, oh yeah, there's always been monsters, hasn't there? Yep. Yeah. There always has been. It's absolutely
my thing
true.
with the way that we have monsters now have so many people just not living though. You know what I mean? They're not going out. They're not doing anything because they're just frightened to walk down a street,
Well, sure. Well, and that's the information overload, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So you're watching about a monster that lives in Wisconsin. And of course it could happen wherever you live. I mean, that of course it could, but you forget that it didn't happen where you live.
Yeah, it happened a world away as far as you're concerned.
Right. Unless of course you're from that community, and then it happened, right there. And yes, of course we know it could have been us and there, but for the grace of God go I, we say it all the time, but at the same time, like that, you're right. It can scare us into inaction. It can scare us into just staying indoors. And that's, that's not necessarily healthy either. When we share the stories of monsters, there's always a way to beat them, to stay safe, and to outsmart them. Right. I mean, that's right. And that's important too, right? You don't have to worry about Krampus if you're a good person. Just be kind and be good, and that monster will stay away from you. And
see, we need to come up with new ones.
I think the old ones can be modernized too. Did you see?
Oh, absolutely.
Christmas Chronicles.
No,
it's on Netflix. So
is it new?
Okay.
Last year was part 2. Christmas Chronicles 2 came out, and it was fun. I mean, whatever as Christmas movies go, it's worth a look. Kurt Russell and Goldie Hawn. Kurt Russell plays Santa Claus, and Goldie Hawn plays
Santa's kind of a dick in it, if I remember correctly.
Well, he's a little more Kurt Russell-y than the Santa Claus are used to. But my point is, in the movie, the villain is the Belschnickel, and
that's right.
And then the Belschnickel's cohort is the Yule Cat, which is just cool. Like I was like geeking out over that, I'm like, yeah, right. And so that's how these monsters come back. They come back through these movies that we're going to watch at Christmas. And the other thing too about Christmas is really what truly defined this season more than anything, and our understanding of it. I mean, when you picture like your traditional holiday, like festivities, and I mean everything around it, like the week leading up and the day and so on, it was truly a ghost story that gave you your concept of what that day is supposed to mean. And you can't say enough about the most powerful ghost story written in modern times, right? Christmas Carol.
Talk about it. Christmas. Yeah, I was going to say, I love that movie. I
Charles
actually
Dickens.
like almost all of the different iterations of it. I watched, I think I've seen them all.
You can't lose, right? Like you can't lose. And Charles Dickens, when he wrote this, Christmas was not a thing. Christmas was just a day. I mean, like, okay, I mean, you'd get together.
Yeah, it wasn't like it was today.
Nothing like today. It was, it was not a big consumer holiday. It was, you might have a meal together and then, that was that. He defined it as this idea that we could be redeemed in one night. We could be redeemed through being haunted. And I mean, by the time you've watched the movie, read the book, seen the play, like you, I mean, I'm the same way. Whatever, if it's Disney's Scrooged or like Bill Murray or any version, right? I'm in. Like I'll be watching. And I love it because you realize by the end of the story who Scrooge is. You're like, oh no, he's me. I'm Scrooge, right? Like it hits you. You're like, but as I get older, I get a little more humbuggy, you know, I get a little more
totally
tight and like, nah, I don't want to give this and charity and begging money and leave me alone, you know? And you realize this holiday has this potential to melt your frozen heart in a single night. And you're like, please, I want that so badly, right? Like, I want to wake up like Scrooge did on Christmas morning and just be like, oh, I have a chance to do better. You know, I've got this notion that it's a new day. I can give to charity. I can be not such an asshole boss at work. I can be this new version of me that's better. And that's the promise of it. And that's the promise that Charles Dickens wrote and brought to America, brought it to Boston, you know, and did a reading of it. And I mean, Boston was the city that banned Christmas, literally banned it. You'd be fined, you know, during Puritan times. It was illegal to celebrate Christmas. I actually
didn't even know that.
They called it satanical, a 5 shilling fine if you're making merry, dressing up or whatever, because this is not Christian.
I didn't even hear this.
So in 1659, way back, puritanical times, Boston banned Christmas. They issued a public notice. It's forbidden to make merry, exchange gifts, dress in fine clothing, feasting. They called it satanical practices because they knew Christmas was a pagan holiday, and they're not pagans. They're Puritans. They're Christians. They're the most Christian of Christians, and they won't have it. And so it was banned. It was repealed in 1681, but it really hung in there. It wasn't recognized as a holiday in 1681. It was just the King of England made it illegal to make it illegal. This is really all that happened in 1681. The king's like, hey man, lighten up, right? Like that was about it. You can't fine people 5 shillings for, you know, having a party on a specific day. But Boston,
did people still celebrate it though?
Well, I mean, not really. I mean, it was not in Boston. It was not really a thing. Kids had to go to school. People had to go to work. It wasn't recognized as a holiday in Boston until 1856.
Damn.
I know. Like, I mean, that's not that long ago. And it was about a decade after that Charles Dickens brought A Christmas Carol to Boston. And it went from a day that's sort of like acknowledged, like, okay, special day, to getting the day off of work and, you know, starting to give the idea, this notion that it's a time to give to charity. It's time for all this stuff. Everything changed because of Dickens' story. That had such a huge impact. And also we're post-Civil War and the nation is just hurting in such a bad way. And so it becomes this federal holiday, and it just all started with like Dickens' story and evolving from there. And then it became this bigger and bigger thing. And then Christmas became a way to save the economy. And not only that, Thanksgiving, right? I mean, the reason Thanksgiving is what it is also has to do with Christmas. It was Abraham Lincoln that first initiated that Thanksgiving would be the last Thursday of November, after being petitioned by Sarah Josepha Hale, who of course wrote Mary Had a Little Lamb. And she was this influential writer, and she's like, we need a national day. Various states celebrated a Thanksgiving, but there was no defined day. Some did it in September, some October, some November. And so the idea was a national day of prayer and thanks on the last Thursday of the month. And that's where it stood all the way until like the 1930s, when retailers were complaining the Christmas holiday season doesn't really start until after Thanksgiving's over. And if there's 5 Thursdays in Thanksgiving, that doesn't give retailers enough time. And so the president moved it to, you know, the 4th Thursday of the month. And that's where it's stayed ever since. It all had to do with making enough room for Christmas buying and spending. And that's
now they've gone to Halloween, the bastards.
Halloween is now the second biggest consumer holiday behind Christmas, and well done. I mean, that's a group effort. I couldn't do that alone, right?
Yeah,
like
but now, before Halloween this year, they had Christmas shit out.
Where are you
Oh, I
seeing
know.
this?
Oh yeah,
Dude,
yeah,
the
yeah.
stores, they did. It's ridiculous. Well, Jerry, you have to go out of your house to actually see this stuff happen. But
I would never do that.
True
but they
story.
did. They absolutely did. I was bullshit.
Yeah, I was in Home Depot, and like a couple days before Halloween, just getting something, and it was one of those things where like it's like you walk in and like there's a murder or something happening to the right, and you just stop dead,
Yeah.
right, and you look over like, what is that over there, right? And you
It's
look at this,
October 15th.
yeah, a sea of Christmas trees and lights, and I'm like, whoa, I didn't even get my Halloween candy yet to hand out,
Yeah.
you know.
We were a little late getting my oldest costume this year. He's getting to the point where he's kind of getting out of it. And we were late doing it. And all of a sudden I'm like, they have Christmas stuff out. I'm like, listen, I'm all game, do your decorations, all that stuff, but what's it going to be next year? September? Like, yeah, screw it. January 1st, we're putting the Christmas stuff out.
I totally get it. But at the same time, when it's like August 20th and I walk into a store and I see Halloween decorations, I'm like, yes, bring it. Come on. We can make it July next year. Let's go.
For Halloween?
I'm in.
Well, that's right up his alley.
Halloween's kind of my thing.
You're like a professional creeper, right?
Yeah, that's how it all started for me was, ghosts and Halloween and everything else.
So how did you get started on that? Because you know like more about like the history of Christmas than anyone I've ever met. How'd you get involved with this?
So my career started as a newspaper reporter, a features writer, and I got hooked on writing about haunted places. That was my thing. It was like, getting these haunted feature stories, and then interviewing people. I love talking to people about their stories, and then finding that the history sometimes backs up the haunts. And then I started a website, and then I started writing books. And then I started working in television. I've been the writer and researcher for every episode of Ghost Adventures since episode 1, and I do my own stuff. And so it's one of those careers that I couldn't have planned. Mm-hmm. It just sort of happened. And then I realized one day, like, wow, this is my full-time job, is looking for ghosts and monsters and aliens and things that bump in the night. And so I'm intrigued with the way and the why that we believe certain things and we practice certain things. And there's always a backstory to everything, right? If there's some like significant rock somewhere, right, there's a story behind that rock.
Mm-hmm.
Why do people come and spray paint it or want to touch it or take a photograph with it? What happened that made this place more significant? And so for me, like picking apart Christmas is the same thing I've done for haunted locations and other legends all over the world. And I loved it. And the more I've been doing it, and now I do this story tour every December where I go and I tell the story of these monsters. And it's so much fun because I'll have people pull me aside and be like, hey, my family's from Newfoundland. Have you heard about the mummers? And I'm like, what are the mummers?
But I need to.
Well, every Christmas they cover themselves with like almost like a bag, and they go door to door asking for like alcohol and treats. And you try to guess who they are. They disguise their voice and stuff. And I'm like, that's amazing. It's awesome. Like, like I didn't grow up with that.
That's a tradition we need.
Yeah, like we could do that here. They're like, you could do that anywhere. And so, I love that. And I hear about these various traditions. When I talked about the Tomton, I had people that were like, my family has made that rice pudding every Christmas. And it is true. Part of the recipe involves one almond. And what you do is when it's made, you stick it into the bowl somewhere and then you serve it. And whoever gets the almond gets like a special present. It's like a significant thing. And so I love how, this melting pot of culture that we are in America, people coming from so many different countries and traditions, that it still survives, that people still talk about these stories, and whether it's through the food or through the elf on the shelf or through the actual Tomton or whatever, we still sort of celebrate these things. And that's a connection to our past, which is a connection to who we are. I mean, how do we know who you are if you don't know where you came from?
I love hearing about it through other people though, because especially around like Christmas and stuff, you stay so within your family, right?
Yeah.
And until you're married or outside, you don't really see other people's celebrations or what they do. So to hear about them is fascinating.
And like I said, it can be whatever you want it to be. I went to a college that was like 60% Jewish, And I remember like teasing them, like, haha, Santa doesn't come to Jewish kids, you know, Jewish friends. And we'd like, and they're like, yeah, what's up with that, man? This kind, benevolent guy ignores like millions of people throughout the world, you know, every Christmas. Like, that's just brutally horrible. And I'm like, you're right. Like, it is brutally horrible. And yet he doesn't have to, you know what I mean? And I know Jewish families that have brought in Santa so they're not left out.
Oh, absolutely.
And they do the tree. And I'm like, do it. Have him. You can have him.
Yeah.
He's available to you, you know?
To me, there's so many people who have detached the religious part from it again.
Well, if you detach the religious part from it, you get to keep all the best parts, right? You get to throw away the parts that divide us and make us angry, and you get to keep the best parts. And like, if you look at the historical Nicholas, I don't think he asked your religion before he gave you money if you were destitute and poor, right? He just said, you need help. I will help you. I don't care, you know, about your heritage or your religious faith or whatever. You're a fellow human being in need. And I mean, come on, man. That's what the season is really about. And so please, oh, please take him. Like, you can take the best parts of this thing without apology. It's someone else for sort of like a sense of control. And again, I'm not disparaging Christianity at all. If people want to make it a religious thing, like you said, every family's different. Your family celebrated it one way. You get married and you're like, oh my gosh, here's these whole other idea. You know, in my family, Christmas Eve is the big day. Like that's the, I mean, that's when we have the big meal. That's when we like really go all out, and everything is like, that's the big party. And Christmas Day is nice, but like dinner's like spaghetti because it's easy. Right? Like, because
no one wants to do anything.
No one wants to do anything. So we're like, if we could get takeout pizza on that day, we would, but they're closed. So, you know, we do spaghetti.
Gotta go Chinese food, man.
Right. You can get Chinese food, of course. That's and
the one thing that's open year round.
That's it. So, you know, so anyway, it's one of those things where you're like, yeah, I mean, that's just in my family and whatever. It's neither religious nor anti-religious. It's just the way we do it. And I love that. And I look forward to it every year. And I look forward to watching and reading, you know, Christmas Carol or seeing it as a play and letting it haunt me. You know what I mean? Like that's part of how redemption happens, is that you sort of have to allow it to happen. You have to allow yourself to be haunted by your past and by your present, and to sort of ponder your future and be like, you know, shoot, the path I'm on right now, do I want to stay on it? Is this going? And maybe you do. Maybe you do some soul searching and say, no, things are good and great. Or maybe you make some course adjustments. And if there's a day of the year that allows us to, you know, to remind ourselves to do that, oh man, I want in, you know, please.
We should have had you on for when we did our Salem witch trial episode.
Oh yeah. We could talk about old Cotton Mather and how he says, in the name of God, thou shalt not be merry.
Right.
I love the way they talked back then. Or at least the way we think they did. Yeah.
If you're happy, something's wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
You're sinning.
I actually tell I joke with my kids all the time when they ask for things. I tell them no. They always ask why, and I tell them, because I don't want you to experience happiness.
No, it's it'll just get your hopes up, and then your soul gets crushed later in life. You don't want to.
Yeah, I'm getting you used to disappointment now, because it's terrible.
It's coming.
Once you move out.
It is terrible. But you know what? It's like Salem witch trials, whatever it is, like whatever story you look at, you have to fit it into a context, right? It's so easy to look at the Salem witch trials and be like, oh my gosh, these people were nuts. But there was a lot going on in the world at that time, right? You've got the King Philip's War and the King William's War, and you've got, you know, villages getting raided and everybody's really scared. And you've got people coming down from Maine that need shelter, and everybody's stressed. And so everything has this backstory and a bigger picture. And we get so hung up on looking at this one piece of it. One of the things in my podcast this week, we talk about Thanksgiving, and everybody got hung up on the idea of the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag having this meal. And I can't pinpoint when people started tying Thanksgiving to that event, but it was absolutely not when George Washington asked for the first day of thanks and prayer back in the 1700s. It was not in the 1860s when Lincoln designated it a day. Sarah Josepha Hale never talked about it. It was later, like it was decades later, that someone said, let's tie it to this. And then, of course, there were some horrible things that were done to the Native Americans in this country. And the Thanksgiving story doesn't sit so well when you know that part of the history. It's like, hey, let me invite you to dinner and then kill all of you. You know, like, I mean, it really takes a horrible steaming dump on the holiday. But it was like revisionist that someone tacked that story to it, and
Oh,
we
yeah.
can throw it out again. You know, we can be like, hey, it's about a day of thanks and prayer, and we don't have to tie it to that particular story because it never was originally. And it just takes a little digging to sort of learn these things, but we just assume we're just repeating the story we heard, you know, from our elementary schools. But there's always a bigger picture to it, and you fit it in the context of the time and the day, and you might get a little better understanding of why it's here. All these holidays, they have a bigger meaning if you allow it.
Well, I think that is a great place to wrap it up. So, Jeff, where can everybody find out more about the history and the horrors of our holidays?
So I do a series for PBS called New England Legends, and we did a creepy Christmas special. If you're an Amazon Prime member, you can watch it for free right now. It's the Christmas episode, and then we've also done some podcasts, New England Legends podcasts on the various monsters of Christmas. There's, you know, and then this December, almost every single day for the first half of December, I'm doing my creepy Christmas story tour, and that I'm either in person live, like at various libraries, or some of them are virtual. So you can attend from anywhere. It's a whole program where I show you old postcards and pictures and sort of weave these stories together. It's so fun. And the whole idea is to, like I said, break this holiday back down into its original pieces, put it back together with the hope that maybe we can shine some light into our Scroogey hearts and maybe appreciate it once again.
All right. Well, thanks for being on the show. It's been a very enlightening episode, and now I view Christmas totally different.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Well, Grizz, I think that a lot of our listeners and maybe us were sufficiently traumatized now by the real history of Christmas. So I hope that you guys now understand what I was talking about in the intro when I recommended covering your home and intestines. It actually matters. Do you want to keep your kids alive?
Also, I think you're saying it was garland. It should have been tinsel or just decorations on top of the garland.
Oh, I don't even know. It's all commercialized now, so they just won't let me use intestines. Lost. So I don't even know what's supposed to replace them.
Which they?
They, the proverbial they. As we found out, it's officially Coca-Cola that changed Christmas for me in 1920.
Yeah, that's true. Bastards. First they get us all addicted to Coke, and then they fucking changed Christmas.
And then they took our Coke away.
Yeah, they did.
So what did you think of the history and the actual traditions that are supposed to be for Christmas?
I thought it was fascinating. Some of the stuff, like, you hear of, but you never dive in because you're like, who gives a shit?
Yeah.
But the more and more I find when you dive into stuff, it's actually fascinating. And I love how different cultures took a way different spin on everything.
I also thought it was really interesting that in Europe many years ago, most of these holiday traditions involved their kids dying.
That was a lot of things, though.
Yeah, I know, but like now, if you want your kids to behave, you're like, oh, you're not going to get your electronics. And 150 years ago, they are like, you will literally die if you don't do this.
Yeah. Well, I think also they had a certain amount of kids that were dying off, so they could really use that example and have some weight to it.
Yeah, death was quite a bit closer.
Johnny died because he didn't fucking listen.
Death was a lot closer to kids back then than it is now. I don't know. I think it's pretty cool stuff. What do you guys think?
Thank you again for listening to Beautiful Bastards. New episodes every Monday. Remember to like and subscribe. We're going to need some more FBI guys.
Bah humbug.